Hi, welcome to What's the Word? I'm your host, Jaime McFaden, and I'm so excited to have you here. This podcast is about all things wellness. Each week, we will focus on a word of the day, and I interview some of the most inspirational people I know and share that inspiration with you. Join me, let's learn together on What's the Word?
This is the place where I belong.
Oh, hello, friends, and welcome back to What's the Word? I am your host, Jaime McFaden, and I am so excited about our special guest today. He is someone who I've wanted to interview for quite some time. We are going to talk about all the things serendipitous, and he is here with us. His name is David Rosell. He's a retirement guide and wealth manager. He's also a fabulous author, public speaker, podcaster, and he very much likes to travel, which we'll probably talk about today. Not to mention, he's a dear friend of a friend of mine. So I'm happy that he's here finally on the podcast. Hi, David. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Jamie. It's fun to be on your show. I've been listening to your podcast for quite some time now, so it's an honor to be here today.
Oh, well, it's an honor to have you. And just so everyone knows, we were having some technical difficulties before, but thank goodness for iPhones, we were able to get back on Zoom, and here we are getting this done. So talk about serendipity, the word you chose today, meaning the unexpected good happenings. Can you talk a little bit about that and what it means to you?
Yeah, I put some thought into it earlier this morning about not only my favorite word serendipity, but what it means to me. And there's words like coincidence, destiny, karma, luck, fate, good fortune, and they all describe my life to this point. However, I do realize that serendipity best describes it. And a lot of people don't even know the definition of that word. And it really is just luck that takes the form of finding valuable or pleasurable things that are not looked for. So my way of just saying it succinctly are unexpected good happenings.
Love that.
And life for all of us, all the listeners out there certainly has its ups and downs, and I'm certainly no exception. But much of my life has really been guided by good happenings.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to dive into that a little bit. So you are in wealth management. You also have your own podcast. You've written books. You speak all over the place. I mean, you kind of do it all. And you have two children that we just kind of talked about a little bit before this. So you are someone that really, you're very inspirational in many different ways, but you're also very aspirational and continuing to be successful in reaching different goals in your life. How has serendipity played a role in your life up until this point?
Well, one of the things I always say is that we're all failing our way to success. So we learn from our mistakes, right?
So I'm doing great then. Just
You're
kidding.
doing great. When I look back, I look and there's like 4 specific incidences or events that unfolded over time that really changed my life. And the first serendipitous event, I don't even think I knew the word at that point, was about sealing my way to success. I was 15 years of age, and I was helping my father seal coat his driveway, where you spread this black tar, this goopy sealer, to protect and beautify the driveway. And the next door neighbor saw this young kid doing it and asked me if I could seal coat his driveway. And I did that next day for $25 on this scorching hot, humid day in 1984. I'm aging myself right there, Jamie. And I was so happy to be making $25 because I was mowing lawns at $5 a pop, and it was equal to 5 lawns. And I started advertising with little handwritten notes to the neighbors. And by the end of that summer, I'd seal coated 8 driveways. And the next year, I started advertising more, and I turned 16 and I bought an old rusted 1977 pickup truck where I could pick up these 5-gallon drums at Smith's hardware store. And I ended up seal coating 25 driveways. And over time, I started growing this business, hiring friends, and turned it into a business where when I sold it at the age of 30, after working my way through college, we were seal coating 1,200 driveways a summer.
Wow. Wow. I don't know if that's serendipity or just your hard work, though.
Well, it's a combination of both. There's
Totally.
always a little bit of luck, but luck is persistence in disguise.
Yeah. Now, you said that there are four key occurrences like this that happened in your life that led you here. Can you share the other three?
Yeah, the second one I'd like to call a financial foundation. I was 19 years of age, and as most listeners know, there's really only two things that a 19-year-old young male has on their mind at all times, and cars are one of them. And I loved the Honda Prelude. Do you remember the old Honda Preludes, Jamie?
I do.
And I'll never forget showing this brochure to my grandma Ruth of this car that really the bank was going to buy me, but I was making enough money to get a loan. And somehow grandparents have a way of communicating with grandchildren, unlike their parents. And she said, David, this is such a beautiful car. It's going to be nicer than all your friends' cars, but I want to share this chart with you. And this chart was so impactful in my life. I have it in all of my books. And it showed a 19-year-old funding an IRA. I had no idea what an individual retirement account was at the time. And at the time, the most you could fund it was $2,000 a year. And it showed this person funding it between the ages of 19 to 27 and never funding it again. And if it grew at the stock market average of 10%, by the time this person was 65, they were going to have over $1 million in their account.
Wow.
And then she showed me the chart to the right that showed someone starting at age 27, which is still young, and funding it all the years to age 65, unlike the first person who started at age 19, and they had 20% less money. And I'll never forget these words she shared with me. She said, David, if you ever want to be independent of a paycheck, and I don't know what your goals are, David, but if you ever do, you don't need to do anything extraordinary. You just need to do some ordinary things extraordinarily well. Like not live on 100 to 110% of your paycheck, but live on maybe 90% and save and invest the rest. And that's when I started looking and learning more and realized that Albert Einstein called compound interest, which is the interest on the interest, the eighth wonder of the world.
Right, right. And I love all of this, and I'm sure this is going to resonate with my audience. And specifically, one of the pillars of wellness that I teach in the self-care system that I have now, put globally out there is all about working on physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and financial wellness, because our finances do touch on every element of our life, whether we want to say it or not. And whether we're someone who's listening right now that feels comfortable with where you're at financially or not, I think that this conversation is going to ring true to you. And what David's saying right now about the compound effect, it's just like what we talk about with building a muscle or training our body. It's not always the things that we want to do, but having the discipline to do the things day in and day out that we know are going to make that investment, right? Whether it's for our body, whether it's for our spirit, whether it's for our mind, or whether it's for our actual wealth. I think that's really important to talk about. And I have to ask you, before we get to the second two serendipitous times of your life, it just came up for me. So my brother is in finance, and it's really funny because our whole lives, he thought in numbers. He just was always really good with numbers. So as I'm hearing you talk right now, I'm curious. Like I wasn't. I've had to hire financial guides. I've had to go to my brother to dig myself out of holes I've created. I was the person that was spending the 115 or more percent of the check I was making, and then working 3 extra jobs just so I could keep going. And it's taken me a lot of years to understand the different dynamics of that compound. But question to you is, because I kind of look at it as maybe there are just some people who are, like I'm more creative, right? Are you someone were you just born kind of understanding numbers?
Great question. Believe it or not, I would say the answer is no. When I
Really?
was in school, math didn't resonate with me. I always knew I wasn't going to become an accountant. What I've realized is that true financial advisors and wealth managers are more psychologists than
Mm,
anything. It's things like learning at a young age that the tougher you are on yourself today, the easier life will be on you later. And then
mm,
sharing this passion with other people. It's right back into your world with physical fitness. And I know that
mm.
you are a guru of that. The tougher you are on yourself today with your physical fitness regimen, the easier life's going to be on you later.
Right.
Health wise, your back, your flexibility, staying young and youthful. And the same happens with money.
Right. So now, can you speak to, because I know I get a lot of messages and DMs and comments from people who are listening to this podcast, looking for inspiration, going through a tough time in their life. And specifically now, since we have you here, who I'm going to call you the financial guru today, that for those that are struggling in their life right now, whether so many people, that I know they've lost their jobs during the pandemic. So many people have, my mom was telling me the other day, unfortunately, she has so many tenants, she manages properties, and so many of them haven't been able to pay rent for months and months and months. And, it's become this big nightmare for someone who's listening right now that might be struggling with their financial wellness, with feeling healthy in that area of their life. What's one place to start?
Yeah, well, one thing that comes to mind is accumulating money or financial independence is no different than working for happiness. The reason I say that is one of the people that I've admired over the years and learned a lot from is someone you may have heard of. His name's Dr. Wayne Dyer,
Mm-hmm.
and incredible author and motivational speaker. And I'll never forget the time I've had an opportunity to have met with him a couple of times when he was alive. And I'll never forget the time he said, the least selfish thing we can do in this lifetime is be happy. And I thought to myself, scratching my head, that sounds more selfish than anything. And he went on and said, you see, when you're happy, you're not a burden on anybody. And that's the least selfish thing you could do. And then he said, who's the most unhappy person you know? And someone came to mind and he said, are they a burden on others? And I said, of course they are. And then he said, who's the happiest person that you know? And that person came to mind. And I realized that they're not a burden on anybody.
Right.
But I realized that a lot of people will come up to people like yourself and myself and say, oh, you're so happy. And I believe that people like you and I have to work at our happiness. I believe that being happy doesn't just happen by getting out of bed on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
It really comes from work and from reading and feeding your mind positive things and working out. And no matter how tough we find life is or could be for any listener out there, it takes work to have financial fitness as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. So it's shifting the mindset from a poverty consciousness to a wealth consciousness. If it is to be, it is up to me. And it's continuing to educate yourself on that field and learning and implementing the things that resonate with you, because it really comes back to what Grandma Ruth told me. You don't have to do anything extraordinary. It's all about doing ordinary things extraordinarily well.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because I think that just goes so well with everything that I teach in every program. It's in my book. The system I've created is just really about bringing first understanding what does it mean to be well. So in our wealth and our finances, I think that's really key too, is a lot of the times we're not even aware, right? I know people come to me, and if they have an issue in that area, it's that they don't even realize where their money's going or where it's been or what's coming in and what's going out. And part of it is just kind of that, okay, well, let's collect some data and take some inventory here. So we know where we're at. We know what it looks like, even if it doesn't look as the way we want it to look. And then we start to create the vision and execute with action and discipline. So I think that it's great because what you teach and what I teach, there is some alignment there, although they're different subject matter, right? And just like David said, for those that are listening, sure, people come up to me and think, oh man, you're so lucky. You've probably always been healthy, but a lot of people don't know what I really went through to get here. And a lot of people don't realize that I too have days I don't want to exercise. I don't want to do these things, but I know what's going to happen later. So I think that's what David's saying here right now as well when it comes to your finances. So let's get back to your other serendipitous occurrences in your life. What's another one that came up for you?
Hmm. Well, I would say the third one would be summed up by not all who wander are lost.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is by the time I graduated from college and I had been running my driveway sealing business for 4 years, we were seal coating about 300 driveways at that time. And we were in a recession in 1990. And while most of my friends were applying and sending their resumes looking for jobs in the business world, I decided, since Mother Nature forced us serendipitously to shut down our driveway operations in the wintertime because it was too cold for the sealer to adhere to the driveway. And rather than look at that as a detriment, I looked at it as an opportunity. So I grabbed my one-man tent, my camping stove, my sleeping bag, put it in my backpack, and bought a one-way plane ticket that took me to Fiji, New Zealand, and Australia. And I always thought, what could be more adventurous at this young age of 21 than traveling down under? And when I was there, it was the beginning of a sojourn of really learning about the world and the people in it, and most importantly, about myself. And then I would come home 6 months later and seal coat driveways again. And we grew the business because I'd reinvest in it and bought, instead of pickup trucks, we switched over to vans. So we didn't have to empty the supplies out all year. And then we were doing 450 driveways. And rather than start looking for a new job, I told my parents, I was still living at home at the time. I said, Mom and Dad, I promise I'm going to go down one more trip, but this time I'm going to go to Southeast Asia and spend a month in 6 different countries, come back and seal coat driveways one more summer, and then I promise I'll find a real job. And so I'm traveling through Nepal and climbing in the Himalayas, going to Malaysia and Vietnam at a time when it was illegal to be there because the trade ban hadn't been opened up by President Clinton, and just saw the world through a different color lens. And it was so eye-opening. And I came home, grew the driveway sealing business another time. And if you would have told me that 8 years after college, I would have spent a month in 65 countries around the world and grew the business to 1,200 driveways a summer, I would have said, you are absolutely crazy, Jamie. But that was the serendipitous events that happened, and had an opportunity to spend that time on 6 continents. And really, over the years, I've learned that experiencing serendipity may have a lot to do with being in the right place at the right time. However, it kind of goes back to what you were saying. It has a lot more to do with opportunities, more than opportunities and events. It has to do with things like attitude and deliberate creation and the law of attraction and taking action. Because if you don't take action with your workout regimen, you're not going to build up stronger muscles. And so it's no different.
Wow. Well, I would love to take a deep dive into your travel journeys and your travel log someday, because that sounds absolutely incredible. And interestingly enough, I always think about serendipity and alignment kind of together. And I'm laughing because here you and I are having this conversation on the podcast. You and I have never met in person. We've met on Zoom, I think, or on FaceTime with our dear friend, Annette. And it's just, I believe we're all connected, right? I think that alignment and serendipity, and I believe I have a very deep spiritual connection that we are all connected together, whether we can see it or not. And when we allow life to work for us, right, instead of to us, I think we can see things differently. So hearing you say this, I'm like, wow, I'm chuckling over here going, I left high school and I traveled around for a year, and I didn't start college for a year after that. And everyone thought at that time that was nuts. But honestly, that was the greatest experience at that point in my life that led me so many ways to where I am today. And I think by having those experiences, taking chances, and at the same time, you clearly have always had a good work ethic. You mentioned that you started working when you were 15 doing this, and look at you came home every summer and you really put the hours in, you put the reps in. And I think for those that are listening right now, we have to remind you, David said something about, I have to go back to this because you said something about be kind of tough on yourself now, so it's easier later. And I want to dive into that a little bit deeper because I think there's got to be probably some sort of a balance, right? Like I have a lot of clients who they're type A, they're busting their butts for a high tech company here in Silicon Valley. They're actually doing so much of the like be tough on themselves that I have to then come in and go, all right, we got to give you a nice warm hug here because you're like not getting the balance part of this to also enjoy the ride as we're on it, right? We're so sometimes wrapped up in the long term that we're sometimes forgetting. And so do you ever find in your life, in this journey you've been on, have you ever come into play with that where you've been kind of wrapped up in the like, okay, I have to do all these things, tough, that it's hard to stop and smell the roses? Or can you speak to that at all? Have you ever experienced that? I know I have.
Yeah, I certainly have. Yeah, I would say up till 10 years ago, I was just working so hard on my practice to grow it. The kids were younger. You've got a mortgage, you've got an office, you've got overhead and a team members that you have to, who are dependent on you for a salary to support their family. And I felt out of balance at that point. And I was referred to a very well-known coach named Dan Sullivan. The name of his company is Strategic Coach. And this is my 10th year in Strategic Coach. And I've learned so much from Dan. Dan has taught me over the years what a free day is. And his definition of a free day is a 24-hour period, midnight to midnight, with zero contact of anything work-related. No emails, no phone calls to the office. Can't even read a periodical in your line of endeavor. And his whole idea is that we're so focused and we're so connected to our cell phones and computers that we're disconnected. And that as entrepreneurs and people in today's workforce, we don't have a time to reboot our brains and our hearts and souls. And he said, if you double your free days, he said he's done a 30-year study on this, you will actually double your income. And I have worked so hard over the last decade to, on a continual basis, and Annette is living proof of this, that the more I'm focused and take true time off, the more I come back so rejuvenated and excited that my business continues to grow and grow. And I believe a big part of it is related to this.
Wow. Okay. That was the gem I was searching for here, because it is true that we need to remind ourselves and each other and those that are listening right now, the work needs to get done. It's not going to do itself. The happiness and the joy isn't just going to magically appear in your lap. The money isn't just going to flow because you one time put it on your vision board or something. You got to do the work. And at the same time, I agree with you. I'm a stickler. Everyone knows I'm very free spirited, similar to Annette in many ways. And I'm the stickler of the one thing I'm the stickler on is this device, the phone and the devices, because I too have found myself sometimes to get wrapped up in it. It's so easy to feel conditioned of, oh, I got to respond to this thing. Oh my gosh, I have this new lead. Oh, a client needs this. Oh, now my mom needs, oh, this person needs this. And it's so easy, I think, as an entrepreneur to just not take time off, but then you burn out real quick. So for those that are listening right now, the free days, I mean, that's what I do on every Saturday is my kind of no day. I say no to everything that's not feeding my soul, and there's no work that day. And that's kind of one of the things I've kind of always adhered to since starting my own business, where I was like, nope, because I need to be present with my kid, with myself, and I'll get too wrapped up. Now you're inspiring me. I want to add a second day to that. Like,
yeah. And you know what I thought was a free day in the past wasn't truly a free day, because I might be up on the lake and really check out during the day. I get back into my car to drive back home. And what's the first thing I do? is I check my emails in case there's that one important email that you have to return. And occasionally on a free day, all of us must do that. And that's okay. Don't beat yourself up for it, but do not call it a free day if
Right.
you're keeping track.
Okay. All right. So everybody, I'm going to challenge everyone listening right now to take a free day and then check in with us and let us know how it went for you. Because I will admit that a lot of my free days are exactly what you're saying. They're not actually free because at some point in the day, it's like this little sneaky thing gets in my hand and all of a sudden I'm replying to a client or something. So yeah.
Yeah, we all have, it took me years to learn how to have what I call a gold or platinum free day. And sometimes I have silver ones, but it's the tinfoil ones that I just don't want to have. And so
Yeah.
I feel that you have to have a true free day. You have to work really hard to gear up for it a few days in advance. So you have
Mm.
systems in place, you have your vacation message on your emails, you're communicating with your coworkers. So like anything, it takes work. Anything that's worthwhile, and free days take work to have a good gold free day.
Yes. Oh, I love that you just talked about strategies and systems because I think that is another thing that we often miss. And when it comes back to circling back to finances, and we're going to get into, you said there are 4 serendipitous moments. Was there a fourth one?
Yes, there is a fourth one. You're not going to let me walk away with only three now.
Nope.
So the fourth one I would call the money man. And what happened is I got so motivated when I learned these lessons from both my grandmother as well as my father, that I started saying, how can I put more than $2,000 away? And I learned about some other types of retirement accounts. And I started reading books and educating myself on this topic, where coworkers and friends and eventually family members would come to me asking me for financial advice. And so when I sold the company at age 30, and a lot of people say, why would you sell that company? And my answer was, I did it already. I felt like
Mm.
I had grown as much as I was going to grow with that business, and I was ready for the new challenge. And I thought, what is it that I want to do next? What is my next calling, that inner passion? And I realized it was helping people with their finances so they could live the life they've imagined. And back to one of your earlier questions, it wasn't because I'm so passionate about crunching numbers. And let's face it, we have computer programs to do that for us these days. It was about helping people realize that they can live the life they've imagined if they're willing to work for it, if they're
Right.
willing to do some ordinary things extraordinarily well. So now we jump ahead 23 years to today, and I've had my firm, my financial firm here in Bend, Oregon, and it's evolved over time where we're really focused on people who are at or near retirement, and they know how much money they have, but they have very little idea of what their money can or can't do for them for the rest of their life. So we go above and beyond numbers. We're talking about life and death and marriage and divorce, and simultaneously caring for older parents as well as grown adults and helping them out financially. And what does life look like once we're no longer here? And so it's the not only the numbers, but it's everything above and beyond the numbers that really make the big difference in people's lives. And that's the part that I'm truly passionate about.
Well, I love that. And thank you for bringing that up because I think oftentimes I know at least my audience, my clients, when they talk about money, it's usually like can be kind of a drag or that it's just about the money itself as opposed to the tool and the things that we can do with it and the things that when we're aware of it and when we work with someone like you, we can understand the values that it holds that isn't just the money, the numbers, that it is so much more that, what can we do for ourselves, for our loved ones, for others? How can we serve the community? If we can take care of ourselves, that's what I teach, right? We take good care of ourselves in all these different areas. Well, then just like you brought up earlier, we're not a burden to other people. I just was talking with a client today. I said, your job today is to say no to at least 5 things today so that you can get your workout in, so that you can eat healthy, so that you can, do the things that you need to do, because oftentimes we tend to get wrapped up in so much stuff that we look back going, I don't even know why the heck I'm doing this. Right. And this is, I think, where a lot of you
Yeah.
and I probably see people and see clients that this is an ongoing thing. And a lot of it, once we start to really take those moments and take those action steps, things can change. So I want to ask you about, before we wrap this up, because I want to be respectful of your time, and I know I have another interview coming up, is let's say someone's listening right now and they're like, okay, I'm feeling motivated, I'm feeling inspired. Um, Two parts to this. First part is, what's kind of like that initial step that you would tell someone when it comes to their finances, wherever they're at, whether they're in a good position or whether they're not in a good position? What's kind of like an initial step someone could take today to kind of enhance their well-being in their financial world?
Right off the bat, I would think don't live on 100 or 110% of your income like most Americans are doing.
Yeah.
Pay yourself first. So we're always paying our utilities first directly with automatic bill pay and our mortgages and rent and all those expenses. And yet we are so much more important. Our family and yourself is more important than all these companies. So I recommend taking a look at your budget and maybe taking 10% from every paycheck and having that systematically go into an appropriate type of retirement account or investment account for your future. So when you're paying the mortgage and paying the utilities, you're also paying yourself first. And Tiger Woods was one of the best golfers in the world, and he had two coaches. Your clients are using you for coaching. Um, I don't think I think it's so much more challenging to get through this lifetime, especially in today's world, whether we're talking about mental health, physical health, financial health, without a coach. So if money is not your thing, which is most people out there, get a financial coach. Talk to your friends. Who are you working with? Interview some different financial advisors that are focused on your stage of life, whether it's climbing the financial mountain in the accumulation phase, or what we are for our clients, people who are already reached the financial summit and they're working their way down in the distribution phase.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, because I feel like you put this beautiful little bow on all of this. Everything in my book that I teach, everything is debunking this myth that we all seem to believe that self-care is this solo mission we're supposed to do. And everything that I want to do, which is why I was so excited to have you here, is to express that it takes a village, this whole connection idea that coaches need coaches. We're always learning. The things that you are bringing today to the table, I'm so inspired by, and I would hope actually to learn more from you. So I want to reach out to you myself. But now, in addition to that, you've written one or two books. Is it two?
Yeah, I actually have a third book at the publisher right now.
Ooh.
And, and the idea behind my books is very few people want to come home from work or on the weekend read a book about finance. So the intent behind these books were to write the first financial planning books that were actually fun to read. And how I accomplished this is I combined my two passions that we discussed in this podcast. One is that of international adventure travel with helping people with their finances. So each chapter starts with one of the more riveting travel stories over those 65 countries that leads into a financial lesson. And when there's one or too many two charts in that chapter, it goes right into the next chapter into another fun travel story. So that was a fun way with the writing, with the speaking I do, with my own podcast, to really mesh the two podcasts and benefit people by doing so.
Wow, I love that. So now, can you tell us the name of your podcast? I can't remember it offhand, but I want to make sure that
Yeah.
everybody goes and subscribes to your podcast today, goes and checks it out.
Oh, well, thank you, Jamie. It's called Recession Proof Your Retirement with David Rosell. And for those who are in getting at or near retirement, the book is called Failure is Not an Option, Creating Certainty in the Uncertainty of Retirement. And for those who are in the accumulation phase, climbing that financial mountain, it's called Keep Climbing.
I love that. Okay, so this is all in the show notes. You can check the show notes right below. Make sure that you go check out David's website. He has all his information there. David, one last question before I let you go. What is the number one thing that you would consider kind of your self-care secret that keeps you level through it all?
Ha! Um, I would say gratitude. If it wasn't serendipity, my word today was going to be gratitude. What we think about expands. Every single morning, I wake up and I complete my 5-minute journal. And that journal entails the 3 things that you're most grateful for right now, the 3 things that are going to make today a great day. And that takes about 2.5 minutes to do so. And then at the end of the day, it says, what are the 3 things that happened to you today? The best 3 things that happened to you today. And in one sentence, what did I learn today? And it's called the 5-minute journal. You can get it on Amazon. I've been doing it for years, and it's the little things that really go far in life. And what we think about expands.
Yes. Oh my goodness. We needed that, all of us. And I love that you brought up journaling. That's one of my favorite. I make every client, they all, whether they like it or not, they're going to be journaling with me because I think the reflection is so key, right? If we don't reflect, we're not really sure where we're at. So David, I want to thank you so much for being here on What's the Word today. I appreciate you. I can't wait to come out to Bend and meet you in real life. But for those that are listening, please be sure, go and check him out. Subscribe to his podcast. Make sure that you are sharing this with somebody that can benefit from this beautiful episode. David, once again, thank you for being on here, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Jamie, such a pleasure. Thank you.
You're a rock star. Keep going.
You are too.
Thank you for joining me here at What's the Word. Follow us on social media with the links on the screen, and don't forget to like and share with your friend. Your support helps us grow and continue to make inspirational content. See you next time on What's the Word.